It began the morning after the funeral when the house still smelled of flowers and burned candles, and the air was heavy with silence. I went into her room not because I wanted to, but because I felt I had to, as if some unseen string was pulling me toward the mess she had left behind. Clothes lay scattered in small heaps, her perfume bottle still uncapped on the dresser, and the faintest trace of her laughter seemed to echo in the air though she was gone. My daughter was 17. 17, with her whole life ahead of her, except she had stepped into the street 2 weeks ago and never made it to the other side. That's what they said, that it was an accident, that the car came too fast around the corner, that she must have been distracted. They said all of this as if it explained the unbearable hole in my chest. I sat on her bed, my hand brushing across the blanket she always dragged into the living room when she stayed up too late, and that was when I noticed the corner of a small black notebook sticking out from beneath her pillow. It wasn't her school planner, not the colorful sketchbooks she used to leave everywhere. This one was different. The cover was worn, the pages swollen slightly as if she had written in it for a long time. I pulled it out slowly, almost afraid it would disintegrate in my hands. Her handwriting curled across the first page, neat but urgent. If you're reading this, then I didn't make it in time. My breath caught in my throat. I closed the book for a moment, holding it against my chest like a fragile animal, then opened it again with shaking fingers. Page after page was filled with words I couldn't recognize as hers, at least not the daughter I thought I knew. There were names I didn't understand, descriptions of meetings in empty parking lots, confessions about shadows following her home from school. She wrote about someone she called only him, capital H, as if he were a title rather than a person. He waits for me outside the station, one entry said. Sometimes he doesn't speak. He just stands there, like he knows something I don't. I told myself it was nothing, but last night he said my name without opening his mouth. I pressed my hand against the page, my body trembling, wondering if this was the product of a restless teenage imagination or something much darker. The entries grew more frantic as I flipped through them. She wrote of feeling watched inside her own room, of hearing her window latch move when she knew she had locked it. She spoke of arguments she never mentioned at dinner, of secrets she couldn't tell me because she was afraid I wouldn't believe her. Then I came to the last entry, written the night before she died. Tomorrow, I have to meet him. If I don't, he said he'll come inside. I don't think I can stop him. If anything happens, Mom, please know I tried. My vision blurred. My hands shook so badly the book nearly slipped to the floor. I whispered her name over and over as if it could pull her back to me, as if it could make her walk into the room and laugh at me for snooping through her things. But the room remained empty, and the notebook felt heavier with every second. I closed it, clutching it like a weapon, and walked downstairs. My sister was still in the kitchen, cleaning dishes that didn't need to be cleaned, her face pale from grief. Did she leave anything? She asked softly, not looking at me. I almost lied. I almost told her no. But instead, I set the journal down on the table between us, my voice breaking. She was writing things I don't understand. My sister glanced at it, but didn't touch it. Don't read it now, she whispered. You're not ready. But I already had, and I knew there was no going back. That night, I dreamed of her voice calling my name from the end of a long hallway, the sound echoing, twisting, until it became a man's voice, deep and slow, repeating the same words she had written in the journal. Tomorrow. When I woke, the notebook was still on the table where I had left it, but something inside me had shifted. Her death no longer felt like an accident. It felt like a countdown she hadn't been able to escape, and now, somehow, the clock had started ticking for me too. The next morning I couldn't resist opening the journal again, though every part of me screamed that I shouldn't. I read the words until they blurred, trying to piece together the fragments of her fear. She had drawn sketches too, shapes that looked like tall figures without faces, standing in doorways, at the ends of streets, even by our own front gate. The more I stared, the more it felt like they were leaning toward me from the page. I shut the book, my heart pounding, and carried it with me when I went into town. I told myself I was going to the police, that they would know what to do, that maybe her words could mean something to someone trained to investigate. But when I sat down in the precinct lobby, clutching the notebook, I froze. What would I even say? That my daughter had been writing about a faceless man and that I believed he had killed her? They'd dismiss it as a grieving mother chasing shadows. I walked out without speaking to anyone, the journal still under my arm. That night the house felt different. I heard a creak on the stairs and rushed out, calling her name before I remembered she wasn't there. No one answered. The silence afterward was heavier than the noise. When I finally slept, I dreamed again of the hallway, except this time I saw her at the end of it. She reached for me, her mouth moving, but no sound came. Behind her, in the shadows, a tall figure tilted its head as though mocking me. I woke drenched in sweat. Over the following days, I started noticing things I couldn't explain. The window in her room was open when I knew I had closed it. The scent of her perfume lingered stronger than before, as if she had just walked through. One evening, while I was cooking, I heard her laugh, clear, sharp, the way it used to echo when she watched those silly shows she loved. I dropped the pan and ran to the living room, but of course it was empty. My sister begged me to stop reading the journal, said I was feeding my grief like an infection. But I couldn't stop. The entries pulled at me, demanded to be read. And the more I read, the more convinced I became that she hadn't died randomly. There were names, places, an abandoned warehouse by the river, a library she visited after school that I never knew about, a boy she mentioned only with initials, D.M., who always seemed to appear right before the strange man did. I decided to look for the boy. At her school, they gave me blank stares when I asked. No one knew a D.M., or they pretended not to. Finally, a quiet girl with downcast eyes muttered that he didn't come around anymore. I asked why, but she just shook her head and hurried off. The unease that had been gnawing at me grew sharper. When I got home that day, the journal was lying open on the table where I had left it closed. A new page, one I didn't remember reading, stared back at me. The date at the top was yesterday. My hands shook as I read. She's looking for him. She shouldn't. If she keeps going, she'll see what I saw. And then she won't be able to come back either. The handwriting was hers, but she had been gone for weeks. I slammed the book shut and backed away, my chest heaving. My sister came in, saw my face, and grabbed my shoulders. You need help, she said firmly. This isn't grief anymore. This is something else. But I knew it wasn't me losing my mind. I knew something was riding through her hand even after death, or that she had written it for me knowing I'd one day search. I didn't tell my sister about the new entry. I only told her I was going to rest. Instead, that night I drove to the warehouse she had mentioned. It stood rotting by the river, its windows broken, its walls covered in graffiti. The air inside smelled of rust and dampness. I held a flashlight, the beam trembling as badly as my hands. The floor was littered with scraps of paper, cigarette butts, empty bottles. But near the back, on the wall, I saw something that froze me to the core. It was her handwriting, scrawled in black marker. He was here. He knows about Mom. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the light. The beam swung across the room and landed on something shiny. I bent down and picked it up, a key. No label, no explanation, just a cold, ordinary key. I shoved it in my pocket and ran out, not daring to look back, though every part of me felt like someone was following. When I returned home, the journal was open again. Another entry. This one read, "Don't use the key. If you do, you'll let him in for real." My knees buckled. I sank to the floor, clutching the notebook, staring at the words that shouldn't exist. That night, the dreams changed. She no longer called for me. She stood silent, her face pale, her lips trembling as the faceless man loomed closer. This time, he lifted his hand and pointed at me. And though he had no mouth, I heard his voice deep inside my skull. "You opened the door." When I woke, the key lay on my nightstand, though I had left it downstairs. The following morning, I stared at the key on my nightstand, its dull metallic gleam catching the light like an accusation. I swore I had left it in my bag downstairs, but now it rested inches from my face as if it had crept there in the night. I didn't touch it. Instead, I shoved it into a drawer and tried to forget about it, though forgetting was impossible when every tick of the clock seemed to echo her warnings. That afternoon, as I left the grocery store with arms full of bags, a voice stopped me. "You shouldn't carry it alone." I turned sharply, nearly dropping everything. A boy stood there, no older than 17, with a pale, sleepless look and hair that hung in uneven strands across his forehead. His eyes, though, were sharp. "You're her mother, aren't you?" I froze. "Whose mother?" He looked at me as though the question insulted both of us. "Anna's." The world tilted beneath me. My daughter's name in his mouth made my heart lurch. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice tight. He shifted, glancing around the parking lot as though someone might be listening. DM, he said simply. She wrote about me, didn't she? The bag slipped from my arms. Cans clattered across the pavement, but I didn't care. My throat closed as I stepped closer. You knew her? He nodded. Better than most. She told me things she didn't tell anyone else. She trusted me because I saw him too. His words hit like cold water. Who? I demanded. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he bent down, helped me gather the groceries, and said softly, Not here. They notice when you say too much in the open. I wanted to argue, to demand everything now, but something in his pale face stopped me. I followed him. We met again later that evening, in the library she had visited so often. It was nearly empty, the smell of dust and paper hanging heavy in the air. DM slid into a chair across from me, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his jacket. She wasn't lying. He began without preamble. About the man. About the figures. They're real. They show themselves to people who are sensitive, I guess. People who can see the cracks. He leaned forward. She was one of them. And so are you. I almost laughed, but my chest was too tight for the sound to escape. You're a child. I snapped instead, more harshly than I intended. You're talking about monsters and shadows as if. He cut me off. Didn't you hear him last night? My blood froze. What did you just say? DM tilted his head, studying me with unnerving calm. You heard him, didn't you? Once you dream of him, it means he's chosen you. My nails dug into the wood of the table. How do you know that? He pulled something from his bag, a notebook, battered and worn like hers. He placed it between us and opened to a page. The handwriting wasn't hers, but it was eerily similar in urgency. He pointed at me this time. I think he knows I can't run anymore. My stomach flipped. Where did you get this? It was my brother's, DM whispered. He kept a journal too. Same drawings, same warnings. He disappeared last year. Nobody even remembers him except me. It's like he was erased. His hands trembled as he pushed the book closer. That's what they do. They don't just take you. They erase you. The silence between us was suffocating. I opened the notebook, scanning desperate scribbles about doors that shouldn't open, about keys that appeared in dreams and then in waking life. The hairs on my arms rose. My daughter had a key. I whispered before I could stop myself. DM. S eyes widened. Then it's too late. Once it appears, it means you've been marked. His words made the walls seem to lean closer. I shut the book and shoved it back at him. If you know so much, then tell me. What am I supposed to do? His mouth opened, but before he could answer, a crash echoed from the far side of the library. A stack of books had toppled on their own. No one else was in the building. We both jumped, my heart pounding in my throat. DM's expression hardened. They're here. They always listen. He stood quickly, shoving his notebook back into his bag. Don't stay in that house alone. He'll use it against you. He started to leave, but I grabbed his sleeve. Wait. You owe me more than riddles. What did Anna tell you? He looked at me, then with such sorrow I nearly recoiled. She told me she thought you could save her. That's why she wrote it all down. Not for herself, for you. The words knocked the breath from my lungs. I loosened my grip and he pulled free, vanishing between the shelves before I could call him back. I sat there long after, staring at the empty space where he had been, my pulse still echoing with his words. When I finally returned home, the house was dark and too still. I climbed the stairs with dread heavy in my bones. Her room door was ajar. Inside, on her desk, the journal lay open again. Another page, another entry in her hand. He's closer now. Don't let the boy trick you. He belongs to him too. The room spun. My knees buckled as the warning pulsed in my mind. Was DM lying? Was he leading me straight into the faceless man's grasp? Or was the journal itself deceiving me, pulling me deeper into madness? The choice twisted inside me like a knife. Trust the living boy who carried the same scars, or the dead daughter whose words reached me from beyond. Neither path felt safe. Neither path felt real. And then, just before I could tear the page out in fury, I noticed something faint at the bottom margin. A symbol, small and scratched, like a keyhole. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the journal on my lap, its pages whispering against each other every time I moved, as though it had its own breath. My eyes burned, but I couldn't close them. Every time I blinked, I saw the faceless figure hovering just beyond my vision, waiting. The house creaked under its own weight, and I felt it watching, not from outside but from the corners within. By dawn I was trembling, clutching a cold cup of untouched tea. I told myself I needed answers, that I would go back to the library, find D.M., demand the truth. But when I arrived, the doors were locked, a police car parked at the curb. 2 officers were pulling yellow tape across the entrance. I rolled down the window and asked what happened. The younger one shook his head, reluctant. The older officer answered, voice flat. Kid was found inside last night. Name's Daniel Marks. Been missing for months, apparently. Strange case. My stomach flipped. Dead, I whispered. The officer's eyes were grim. Not exactly. Just gone. Nothing left but his bag. Like he was never there at all. I drove away before they could see my hands shaking. His bag, his notebook, what if they were gone too? Erased like him. The journal on my passenger seat seemed to throb heavier with each turn of the wheel, as though reminding me I was next. At home I locked every door and window, but security meant nothing when the real danger was already inside. I tore through the journal again, hunting for the symbol I had seen in Anna's last entry. The tiny keyhole sketch repeated, scattered through earlier pages I had skimmed over. In the margins, beneath drawings of doors, scratched faintly over words. How had I missed it? I traced the symbol with my fingertip and a sharp jolt shot through my hand, a static sting that made me drop the book. When I picked it up again, new words were there. Faint, like ink pressed into the page without a pen. Find the door before he finds you. My breath hitched. The room tilted, and I stumbled back. Was Anna speaking to me, guiding me? Or was it him, using her hand as a mask? Either way, I couldn't ignore it. I grabbed a flashlight, stuffed the journal in my bag, and climbed into the attic. The air was suffocating, thick with dust. Cobwebs clung to my arms as I pushed past old boxes, searching for something. Anything that looked like a door. At first, all I found were walls and insulation, the beams groaning under my weight. Then, in the far corner, I saw it. A panel, smaller than a regular door, cut into the wall. And on it, scratched faintly in wood, the same keyhole symbol. My knees went weak. The key. I had hidden it in a drawer downstairs, but I knew it would fit. I didn't want to touch it, didn't want to open what waited behind that panel, but my body moved on instinct. I turned back toward the ladder, only to freeze. He was there, not fully formed, just a shadow stretched too long across the attic floor, a tall outline without features. My chest seized. I stumbled, dropping the flashlight, its beams spinning wildly. The shadow twitched, as if startled, then crept closer. My scream stuck in my throat. I scrambled down the ladder, crashing into the hallway below, heart slamming like it wanted to escape my chest. I didn't stop until I reached the drawer. My hands shook as I yanked it open. The key lay waiting, cold and impossibly heavy. I gripped it until it cut into my palm, then turned back toward the attic. But when I climbed again, breath ragged, the panel was gone. The wall was smooth, seamless. I broke then. I tore at the wall with my nails until blood streaked the plaster, screaming Anna's name, begging her to show me where it was. The only answer was silence. When I collapsed, sobbing, the journal slipped from my bag and fell open on the floor. Its pages turned by themselves, whipping faster and faster until they stopped at one line. He hides it when you're not ready. I couldn't breathe. I pressed my forehead against the floor, tears soaking the wood. I was losing her, losing myself, losing any grip on what was real. The house felt like a trap, the journal like bait, the key like a shackle binding me to his game. By the third night without sleep, the boundaries between waking and dreaming dissolved. I saw Anna in the hallway, her hair damp as though she'd just come in from rain, her eyes wide and pleading. I reached for her, but my hand passed through air. She mouthed something I couldn't hear. Then the faceless man appeared behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder like he owned her. My scream echoed through the empty rooms until it no longer sounded like my voice. I woke curled on the floor, the key pressed against my chest. The journal was open again, though I had locked it away. This time the handwriting was jagged, desperate. He's almost done. You have one choice left. And then, at the bottom of the page, the symbol appeared again. Only this time it wasn't just a sketch. It was carved into the paper so deep it cut through several pages. The keyhole seemed to stare back at me like an eye. That was when I realized the collapse wasn't coming. It had already begun. I held the key so tight it cut crescents into my palm, but I barely felt the pain. The journal pulsed on the floor, its pages rising and falling as if it were breathing. Every time I tried to look away from the carved keyhole, my eyes were dragged back, like it had a gravity of its own. My chest ached with the weight of a choice I couldn't name. Destroy it, or open it. Either way, I felt I would lose. I staggered into the kitchen, grabbed a matchbox from the counter. If fire could erase D.M., maybe it could erase this too. I struck one match and held it above the pages. The flame wavered, fragile, but the journal did not burn. Instead, letters formed in the heat. It doesn't end that way. Not for you. The flame flickered out between my shaking fingers. A laugh broke from me, sharp and hollow. Not mine, not Anna's, his. It filled the room, bouncing off the walls, until the windows rattled. I screamed at him. What do you want from me? Why won't you leave me alone? Silence. Then, a voice, low and guttural, seemed to crawl from the journal itself. You already know. You brought the key. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor. The kitchen swam, edges blurring. I saw Anna again in my mind's eye, her mouth forming silent words. And suddenly I understood. She wasn't begging. She was warning. The door wasn't escape. It was a threshold. Once opened, nothing would be the same. I rose with the key in one hand and the journal in the other, dragged myself back to the attic. My footsteps echoed too loudly on the stairs, as if the house was empty and endless. When I pushed open the hatch, the air inside was colder, sharper, as though I had climbed into another season. The wall in the corner was no longer smooth. The panel was there again, the keyhole carved deep. This time it waited for me. I approached, my breath shallow, the journal heavy in my arm. The shadow stood to the side, taller than the ceiling should allow, faceless head tilted as if in mockery. I lifted the key. My hand trembled so violently it rattled against the wood. My mind screamed to stop, to turn back, but my body moved as if pulled by threads. The key slid into the hole, cold metal against splintered wood. Before I could twist it, a rush of memories hit me. Not mine, Anna's. Her hands writing by candlelight, her fear as she heard footsteps in the night, her decision to hide the journal. Then, something darker, her final moment, when she turned the key and faced him. I saw her swallowed by a light too bright to be holy, her scream cut off before it began. I yanked the key back, heart hammering. No, I whispered. Not like her. Not again. The shadow moved then. It detached from the wall, rising taller, filling the attic with a chill that scraped across my skin. Though faceless, I felt its hunger, its satisfaction. A voice without lips thundered in my mind. You are already chosen. The door is yours to open. Tears blurred my vision. If I open it, you win. If I burn it, you still win. What choice do I have? The journal's pages flapped wildly, stopping at a single phrase. Choose her or me. Anna's face flickered in my mind again, her lips forming that same silent word. I knew then. She hadn't been warning me away. She had been telling me where to go. I lifted the journal high, and instead of turning the key, I drove it into the panel, pressing the carved keyhole against the wood. The air split with a crack like thunder. Light burst from the seam, not blinding but soft, golden, spilling over me in a warmth I hadn't felt since the night before she died. The shadow reeled, retreating into the corners, writhing as though the light scalded it. The voice roared, louder than any storm. You can't bind me again. You'll lose yourself with her. Maybe I would. But I knew I couldn't let him take me the way he took her. My arms shook with the force of holding the journal against the panel, the light pulling me forward like a tide. The shadow lunged one last time, stretching to claw me back, but the golden glow swallowed it whole. And then, her voice. Anna's voice. Clear, steady, cutting through everything. Come home. The attic dissolved around me. I felt myself falling, or rising, or both at once. The journal tore apart in my hands, its pages scattering like ash in a wind that didn't exist. The key melted into my skin, a searing brand in my palm. And then, blackness. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the living room floor. The house was quiet, the journal gone, the key gone. Only the scar in my palm remained, shaped like the keyhole. I sat up, trembling, listening. No shadow, no voice, only silence. But silence wasn't peace. It was waiting. I woke to the smell of dust, and old wood, sunlight bleeding through the curtains in narrow beams. For a few minutes I didn't move. I lay on the floor, my palm pressed to my chest where the scar still burned faintly, as though the key had branded me from the inside out. The house was silent, but the kind of silence that hums with something buried beneath it. I sat up, and for a fleeting second I thought I saw Anna at the edge of the doorway, her shape, her posture, her hair catching the light. But when I blinked, she was gone. The journal was nowhere. The attic above was empty when I checked, the panel smooth, unbroken, as if none of it had ever existed. But I knew better. My body carried the memory. My mind carried her voice. My hand carried the mark. Days passed in a haze. I slept little, ate less. At night, I heard whispers drifting through the house. Words I could almost understand, but never quite. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the window glass, and it lingered a second too long, watching even after I'd turned away. Once, I swore I saw the shadow's outline etched faintly against the hallway wall, but it didn't move, didn't breathe, just waited. I told myself I had won. That binding, it meant it was gone. But the scar on my palm pulsed when I touched it, a heartbeat beneath the skin. And every time it beat, I thought of Anna. One evening, I walked out to the garden, where the earth was still uneven from where they had buried her. The grass had begun to grow back, but the soil always seemed darker there, as if it remembered too. I sat by the mound and pressed my marked hand into the dirt. For a long time, I said nothing. Then, softly, I chose you. The wind stirred, cold against my cheek, but the soil stayed still. No answer, no voice, just the steady hum under the earth, like a thread connecting me to something I couldn't see. The weeks stretched into months. I tried to live as though life could return to normal, but the journal's absence became its own haunting. The more I tried to forget, the sharper its words returned. Choose her or me. You'll lose yourself with her. The shadow had spoken in riddles, but I felt them unfolding inside me, piece by piece. And then came the night I woke with the taste of smoke in my mouth. I sat up in bed and saw it, pages drifting down from the ceiling like ash. I caught one in my hand. It was blank. Another landed beside me, this one with writing. Her handwriting. Anna's. If you read this, it means the binding wasn't the end. It means the door still waits. I tried to close it, but it doesn't close. Not really. It chooses another keeper. My heart pounded as more pages fell, covering the bed, the floor. Every page the same. Fragments of her thoughts, her despair, her love, her fear. My name over and over, her voice reaching from somewhere I could never follow. When I looked at my palm, the scar had split open, not bleeding but glowing faintly, like a keyhole lit from the other side. The shadow had been right. I hadn't ended it. I had only taken her place. The next morning, I packed a bag. I locked the house. I left the garden behind. But wherever I went, the pages followed, slipping out from under doors, scattered across hotel floors, tucked inside library books. Once, in a crowded cafe, one landed in front of me, and a stranger picked it up before I could. They read a line, frowned, then looked at me with eyes suddenly too empty, as if a piece of themselves had been stolen. I snatched the page back, but their expression lingered, hollow and wrong. I realized then it wasn't just me anymore. The journal, or whatever it was now, was seeping outward. If I stayed still, it would find others. If I moved, maybe I could keep it contained, keep it tethered to me. So I keep moving, town to town, never long enough to leave a trace. My bag grows heavier with the pages I gather, but I burn them when I can, even though I know fire doesn't truly kill them. The whispers are louder now. Sometimes I hear Anna's voice, sometimes his. Sometimes I don't know which is which. Last night, I dreamed of the attic again. The panel glowed, the keyhole wide open. On the other side was not light, but a mirror. And in it, I saw myself, not older, not younger, but emptied, with the shadow standing where my reflection should be. It lifted its hand, showing me the same scar, the same keyhole. When I woke, my scar pulsed so violently I thought my skin would split. And I understood, this story doesn't end with me. It never did. If you're reading this, maybe you found one of the pages I couldn't burn. Maybe you felt its pull, the way I did when I first touched her journal. Maybe you think you're safe, but you're not. Because the journals don't disappear, they change hands. And the mark always finds someone new. I chose Anna once. I would choose her again. But choices don't matter when the door always waits. And somewhere, just at the edge of hearing, I swear I hear it turning, metal teeth grinding in the dark, a key slipping into a lock.